Howdy, partners. This is Kiram with MassiveEffectMarketing.com. We make your marketing go from this to this. So today we're doing something a little different. We're going to talk about design, and this is pretty important for the small business. We're going to talk about style guides and mood boards. The thing is, you are promoting, you have a website, you've got social media profiles, you have pieces of promotion that go out, you have a logo, you have your letterhead, right? And a bunch of other things that I'm not thinking of at the top of my head, but you have your company represented in different places, right? Whether it's on paper or on the web. And there needs to be a cohesive image. It can't all be completely random. And it helps with, the word branding comes literally, from branding a cow with a piece of molten iron. You're not going to get the benefit of your logo and your name being out there if things are always mishmashed and not coordinated. So what people do, smart people do, is they create a document. All right, it's a document, and it's a central location for all things related to how their business looks on paper and on digital. That way everything can be coordinated and nothing looks hodgepodge. So here's an example of a mood board. So just to clarify the differences, so a brand style guide is going to be a lot more in depth. There's going to be several pages. A mood board is a lot more informal. All right, on the mood board, we're just going to throw down the logo. We're going to put some color palette, the fonts really quick, some icons, and some vibes, and some patterns. Whereas on a style guide, they're going to, let me show you an example actually. Let me show you an example of brand style guide. Go to images. Let's try to get something. This is this is more like a mood board-ish. But brand style guide. All right. They get really granular into the logo. Notice how they have mathematical formulas for making sure the logo is always exactly perfect. So this is more, when you're getting into a brand style guide. They have do's and don'ts. They have logo variations. See all these logo variations? Because you have to realize, you have your logo, but it's not always going to be in the same format. Sometimes you have to invert it. Sometimes it needs to be square. So in a full brand style guide, that's what you're going to do. Yeah, and it just goes more in depth. So what we're talking about now is a simplified version of a brand style guide, and that's the mood board. So we're just throwing things together. So you can see that we've got that here. Color palette. You can put as many colors as you want, but typically, you should max out at 5. Notice we're going from light to dark. Right, on fonts, typically you don't want to have too many different fonts. 1 or 2 at the most. Moving on, you have your icons that you use, buttons on your website, and then you have some descriptive words to describe. Okay, well, what is the image? What should your images convey, right? Your website or your promo or your print, what vibe should they convey in words, and then also graphically, right? So if one has a website, it's going to have a similar vibe to this in all the promo as well. Then of course you have patterns and textures that you can use. So this just gives you kind of something to go off, especially if you're working with a team of people, to make sure everyone is doing everything the right way and not just guessing. You have one central document where it's already figured out, and that way your image can be uniform. I have one over here. We're doing a rebrand over at Massive Effect, and we've got the logo right here, inverted, right? We have two different fonts, Courier Prime, Source Code Pro, which may change. We've got a color palette which is in progress, right? Icons, buttons. We have the mood, and we have some imagery to kind of back that up. These are from the Matrix. So you can see once you have something like this, whenever you're, you would do this before you make your website, right? Or if you already have a website, okay, then you need to do one of these newly. But anytime you make a piece of promotion, what font do we use? Well, we're going to use the font in our style guide or from our mood board. That way, there's no wondering, right? Whether or not you're making a quote card for social, and that could also be included. If you do a full-on style guide, you can have a whole section on social, because on social you create content. So what font are you using on your social posts? What color palette? Typically, it's going to be the same as this, but that just makes sure that everything is uniform and there's no guessing, and it really speeds things up, honestly, because you know what you're going to do each time. And then you get the bonus of a really cohesive image. I don't know if you've seen some Instagram accounts where it's just completely random looking when you open up the feed. And then you see some Instagram accounts where everything is just so it's so polished and smooth. Those ones are all following a brand style guide. Whether they're doing it, they made one, or they're just doing it from memory every time, they're following a certain pattern. So it definitely behooves you to do one of these. They're not too hard to do. I mean, you don't need to be a graphic designer to do one of these. You could go to Fiverr. All right, you can go on down to the Fiverr and go to Fiverr.com, and they actually have that as a service. Fiverr. You can hire dudes on Fiverr. Brand style guide. I mean, I don't suggest making it your own, making it yourself, because who's got time for that? Unless you want to do something on the weekend for fun. But, this is Fiverr brand style guides, and they're pretty darn cheap, literally, $30 to have someone do a little style guide for you. And, the quality varies. They've got a logo, they've got textures, they've got font, they've got logo variations, business card, right? This is a super duper, I would call this a mood board. It's not a full-on style guide. Again, the style guide has a lot of other stuff, a lot of other things, and it's a lot more detailed. The mood board is kind of like a simplified version of the style guide. So, I mean, wham bam, $65, that's what you get, right? Or who was the dude for $700 over here? So this is a logo plus a brand style guide. So they'll make you a logo as well. And they make you a PDF like this, right? It's all fancy schmancy. And each page of the PDF is going over a different aspect of the brand style guide. So you can see once you have a document like this, you're just going to really upgrade your appearance. And appearance is everything on the web. So you're judged by your appearance, so it behooves you to have a good one. So yeah, you can go on Fiverr. You don't have to pay $700. Honestly, you can get a decent one for $50. I don't know about 10. Probably, I don't know. He probably doesn't mean $10 for the whole thing. But you could also try making one yourself if you want to be, a hobbyist about it. If you're into design as a hobby, but you could end up, I don't know. I wouldn't do it yourself unless you were an artist, because you might end up with something very ugly, and the whole point is to look good. Here's one. I will design business identity, fresh logo. So these are some logos. Typography, yeah. Anywho, that's the idea. If you want some help, we typically don't do, we do brand style guides, but we don't promote it. It's off the menu. So if you don't want to do it yourself and you don't want to hire someone from Fiverr, you can come on down to Massive Effect and we can make one for you, customized to fit your needs. So that's massiveeffectmarketing.com. So come on down and let us know. And if you have any questions about what I went over, if it didn't make any sense, feel free to ask me in the comments and I can expand on it further. But it's pretty simple. There's not a whole lot of explaining involved about why you should do one. As far as actually making one, we can talk for hours about how to make a proper style guide, because you need to consider, your identity, what image do you want? What do you want to convey and why? Why should this be dark, sober, and aggressive? And why, bright, glamorous, and crisp? Are these even the right things to choose? How do you figure that out? How do you figure out your image? How do you choose the right colors and font? It's quite technical. So that's beyond the scope of this video. But if you have any questions about style, design, throw it in the comments and I would be happy to answer them. All right, so until then, have a great weekend and I'll see you next time.